WKXX is live for the fastest 2 hours in sports talk radio. Get ready for Chase Robinson.
He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani.
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
It is WKXX Live. Welcome in. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani. Hope you had a great Christmas weekend. I know I did, and glad to be back for another week. As hard to believe we're kind of rounding out 2022 now, getting ready to flip over to 2023, but a lot going on this week. But made it through Christmas. Now we're in our final stretch here of 2022.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this time of year you start to get reflective about some of the things that happened over the course of the year. Our favorite sport, football, obviously bleeds one year into the next. However, it doesn't seem like that long ago we were talking about Georgia winning its first championship in however many years, and then obviously the parallels with Coach Dooley. And then you're bleeding into another football season. And in between, then we've seen things like, your NBA champion, your college basketball champion. It's just been a really solid year of sports all around. And then we're kind of, closing it out and then, getting ready to get into the new year as we close out still things in this season, so to speak, in terms of football. Yeah.
And it's been a great year for sports. And we will take some time throughout the week and as we get closer to the weekend to look back at some things that happened in the world of sports in 2022. But we do got to get you ready for Alabama, Kansas State, because that's happening this Saturday. It's game week. And I know for coaches, you don't always get this, especially with these bowl games where it works out where you're playing on Saturday, especially with these New Year's, when they like to play on New Year's Eve. Well, it just so happens New Year's Eve falls on a Saturday this year. So you kind of get your, you're not, you're on the road, but you're able to kind of do what you've done all season in terms of preparation of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, leading up to your game Saturday.
Yeah, and that's another benefit of the Christmas weekend or Christmas Day and Christmas Eve falling on a weekend, because it does reset your calendar. I know Alabama and Kansas State both set to be in New Orleans today to start their game week preparations, and so you can get more of a normal game schedule, because most coaches, whenever they play on a non-Saturday, you have to adjust your schedule because all coaches and players are creatures of routine.
Yeah.
So you just do your Thursday on X day and your Friday on X day. You have to manipulate the calendar kind of in your head to be able to kind of get a normal week. But in this situation, 11 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, you're used to that. You're used to, something around there, maybe not 11 o'clock for Alabama, but you're used to these kind of situations. And so you can kind of play your Monday like you play every Monday, except now you just have the added distractions of everything that comes with the bowls, which that's the only difference between that and a regular game. But as far as your schedule goes, you're in good shape.
Yeah. And again, that is 11 a.m. on Saturday, which it's rare you get a Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Not a primetime game, but obviously with it being on New Year's Eve and you have the playoff games that day as well. Alabama gets the 11 a.m. kickoff with Kansas State, a team we saw in the Big 12 championship game, a team we saw win the Big 12 championship over TCU, who is that 3 spot in the playoffs. So Chris Kleiman has Kansas State, I think, right where he wants them heading into that game, coming off of a big win in the conference championship game. And Alabama, who honestly hasn't had the season they would have liked, not being in the SEC championship, not being in the college football playoff.
Yeah, this is a K-State team that is probably kicking themselves a little bit as well, because they lost that game to Tulane to begin the season.
Yeah.
Then they lost to Texas earlier in the year. You would have to think, if you're a K-State fan, hey, if we would have won those games, we'd be in the college football playoff, because they would have one loss. That one loss will obviously be to TCU, but then they avenged that loss in the championship game, so they would have been the team in the playoff. So they're obviously wanting to, prove themselves among the elite of college football. I think everybody was talking about the teams that could get in. If it wasn't TCU or Ohio State, one of those teams was Alabama. So you can do two things. You can knock off a perennial power, but then also show that you probably belonged in that upper crust. That way, it kind of bodes well for the following season. So, an interesting situation, the situation playing out here for K-State, but also for Alabama as well, with the fact that two of the best players in college football at their positions and just players in general are playing in this game. So there's really no excuses for anyone.
Yeah. We talked about it last week, the importance of those guys playing and the fact that there are no opt-outs in this game. So you're getting the full team for both Alabama and Kansas State, which I think is exciting for fans of both teams and really fans of college football to watch this game, knowing that full rosters on both sides. But Chris Kleiman spoke just on what makes Alabama special. I mean, this is a historic program that Kansas State is going up against.
Yeah, and this is a program to me in Kansas State, unlike maybe some of the others in the Big 12, that I don't think that they're scared of Alabama. I think they respect Alabama, but I think that they have a healthy respect, but at the same time, coming with a lot of confidence against the Alabama football team. However, what they see in the Big 12 week to week will be far different from what they see in this game, knowing that they have to really play well in certain aspects of the game going into the Sugar Bowl.
They're really good up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Other teams in our league are really good up front as well, but they've, in my mind, I know they have Heisman Trophy winners in Bryce Young, and they have really good skill kids all over the place. But when you watch them over the last decade that I've watched them, their front seven has always been very disruptive, and it's no different this year. And their offensive line has always owned the line of scrimmage, and that's kind of where I look at Alabama and say they win up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and I know they have skilled kids all over the place. It's going to come down to our preparation, and we talked about that yesterday after practice, that we've really got to dominate the details of our game plan, because I think Alabama does as good a job as anybody of attacking your weaknesses and attacking, whether it's a personnel or a scheme, what you do poorly. They do a great job of exposing that. So we have to do a great job of dominating the details and doing a great job with execution and just knowing our game plan. But I know that all of our guys, no matter where you're from, are really excited about the opportunity for starters to play in the Sugar Bowl, to be in a New Year's Six game. And I know the fan base is excited about going down to New Orleans, and then we'll see what happens on the 31st.
Chris Kleiman, their Kansas State head coach, as he talks about what makes this Alabama team stand out. It's a good challenge for Kansas State, and I think they really can challenge Alabama for sure with some of the strengths they have as well. So I think this is setting up to be a really good game that we'll see Saturday morning.
I think so too. I mean, this is, to me, a Kansas State team. A lot of veteran leadership. They got some athletes. They got some NFL guys on their team. You think about a guy like Deuce Vaughn, their running backs, rushed for over 1,300 yards.
Yeah.
He reminds me a little bit of kind of older fans will remember Darren Sproles, who played at K-State a while ago. Shorter guy, shorter in stature, but just really, really, really shifty. And he's one of those guys that I think can play at that high level. Adrian Martinez got hurt earlier in the year. Will Howard comes in as the quarterback. I think he does a really nice job kind of setting everything. Adrian Martinez, they're trying to get him ready for the bowl game. Not sure if he will be ready to go, but Will Howard will get the start in that game. So Alabama has played against the run really well, and I expect them to play against the run really well as well. Can Will Howard do enough in the passing game to throw Alabama off defensively? But as far as just, coming in with confidence, I think this team will have full confidence going in and a kind of a prove-it mentality.
Yeah.
Because they know that this is a chance to prove it to themselves that they're able to keep up with the upper part of college football.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. So Alabama, Kansas State coming up Saturday at 11 a.m. Jimmy Stein from BamaInsider.com will join us in just a few minutes to help us get an early preview on this Sugar Bowl game, a game that Alabama's familiar with over the years. And a lot of times the team who doesn't end up in the SEC championship does get to Sugar Bowl. It's been good to Alabama. It's been not good to the Crimson Tide as well, playing down in New Orleans. But that is where they will be Saturday against Kansas State there in the Sugar Bowl. Coming up, we'll also give you an early look at the Fiesta Bowl, TCU, Michigan. We'll look at the Peach Bowl a little bit, Ohio State, Georgia, as we get you ready for those games Saturdays. We'll look at college basketball. We'll look at the NFL. We're going to grade SEC football coaches from this year. So we'll give you grades for all those guys. We got a lot to get to over the next couple of hours. You can listen to us over the air, 102.9 FM, online, WKXX.com. Also, we've got the Facebook and YouTube streams going on, so you can watch us there on YouTube and Facebook Live. Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com, will join us to talk Sugar Bowl next as we continue here on this Monday, the day after Christmas. It is WKXX Live on Fox Sports 102.9.
I've got a math question for you. When you add
It is a Monday afternoon, day after Christmas, here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson here alongside Gerhard Mathengani. It is game week for the Alabama Crimson Tide, getting ready for the Sugar Bowl Saturday as the Tide takes on Kansas State down in New Orleans. To talk about it with us now, we welcome on Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com, also the Locked On Bama podcast. Jimmy, always great to talk with you. How are you today?
Doing great. I hope you had a great Christmas.
Yes, I hope you did as well. And excited about this Alabama K-State matchup Saturday in the Sugar Bowl. Obviously, Alabama wanting to be in the college football playoff. They're not, so they get the Sugar Bowl, and they get a good Kansas State team in the game as well.
Well, it's an opportunity to prove, maybe not necessarily that you belong in the playoff. That's water under the bridge. But what you can still prove, Chase, is that you're a real good football team. Kansas State gives you that opportunity. If you beat Kansas State, now you can print T-shirts that proclaim you're the Big 12 champion. I mean, that's something. You know, Kansas State is a good team. They've won 10 games. They beat TCU. They're the only team that's not in the college football playoff with a win over a college football playoff team. So you beat Kansas State, you prove that you're a really good team. The chance to make the playoff went away, a month or so ago, but you can still prove that you're a really good team.
Yeah, hey, Jimmy Gerhard here. What about from Alabama's perspective? Did it surprise you, the announcement that both Bryce Young and Will Anderson are playing? And how big of an impact do you think that decision will make, not only maybe on this game, but for other guys that are obviously top 5, top 10 potential NFL draft picks moving forward?
Well, it really was huge. On the surface, I'm surprised because guys with their draft profile generally have been skipping this game for a while. I think Alabama fans expected them to sit out. I think had they chosen to sit out, there would not be hard feelings. I think everyone would get it. But the decision to come back is just huge. It changes not only this game, but that's a great point about how it might change things going forward. Because if you're the presumed number one pick in the draft, in most mock drafts right now, which you can't take too seriously, the draft process, the draft evaluations are just getting started from the NFL point of view. But he is the presumed number one pick as of today. If he's playing, how can almost anyone justify sitting out? He's already been hurt. The fact that he would put himself out there in a game that's not a playoff game, I think it sends a message to the rest of the college football world. I believe probably to some extent NIL is affecting it a bit in the sense that in previous years these guys weren't paid. They weren't. There was nothing to protect them. Obviously, there's new rules as it relates to insurance that the schools can help you procure to protect against career-ending injury. That's a factor too. But overall, it's a heck of a message. I mean, if you're the number one pick in the draft and you're playing, then why is a projected 4th, 5th, or 6th round pick sitting out?
That's an excellent point. And I'm glad to see Bryce Young and Will Anderson both playing in this game. And I know from kind of Alabama's perspective and Kansas State, both no opt-outs in this game. So both teams are going to be at full strength. And so I think now for both teams, whoever wins, you got to win with the other team at full strength.
That's right, and I think that makes it almost a bit of a rarity among the non-playoff games that both teams don't feature opt-outs. Now Alabama's got 12 guys or so in the portal. I assume, I don't even actually know how many Kansas State have. I don't think they've lost anyone of significance to the portal, but Alabama has a couple players that had they not entered the portal would likely be starting or playing with the first team. Guys like Javion Cohen would almost certainly be starting at left guard. JoJo Earl would certainly be in the first team rotation at wide receiver. Those guys won't be there. They're in the portal moving on to new places. So I wouldn't say that it's 100% full strength, but I'll also say, as you point out, it really is in the sense that Alabama's not really going to hugely miss those guys. You have a Tyler Booker who's been a co-first team guard with Javion Cohen. There's several younger receivers that have been in the first team rotation most of the fall and now have had the extra bowl practices. So Alabama won't really miss those guys. and I doubt Kansas State's missing anyone that's in the portal either. So this really is a good look at what Alabama had in 2022 and what Kansas State had in 2022. And hey, if Alabama wins this game, it's conceivable they could finish in the rankings in the top 4. I don't know what that gets you, but it would send some type of message.
Yeah, for sure. For Alabama, who do you think has the most to gain from this game as they springboard into next year? So maybe the guys that, let's just assume that, guys like Bryce and Will make their way to the NFL. Who do you think has the most to gain as far as the springboard going into 2023 from this bowl game?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and I'll pick a guy that everyone's familiar with that I think deserves a higher profile going into next season, and maybe he makes a play or two in this game that helps that case, and that's Jace McClellan. He's basically the number 2 back behind Jahmyr Gibbs, but as the season has progressed, he's sort of played a bigger role at running back. I would love to see, for his sake in particular, for McClellan to have one more sort of a statement game. So he goes into next season at Alabama, his 4th season, his senior season, not only as running back number 1, but maybe as a guy that deserves talk as one of the better running backs in the SEC. He's certainly been a 3-year contributor. He's made several big plays. He's got a well-rounded game. He's good inside. He can make the big play outside, an 80-yard touchdown run against Texas, for instance. He catches the ball. He's improving as a blocker. I think this could be a one more chance for Jace McClellan to enter next season on a high note and for people to consider him as one of the better backs in the SEC.
We're talking with Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com, as well as the Locked On Bama podcast. We've seen Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. We've seen them in bowl games that have not been playoff games. We have not always seen great performances from Alabama. This is not only from Alabama, but from other teams as well who are used to being in the playoffs. How can Nick Saban bring the motivation for this team this week?
Well, I think they've all opted in, right? And who knows? Nick Saban, I'm sure, has some great halftime speeches or pregame speeches or pre-practice speeches. He doesn't need me for that. But one thing that I think he should bring up is, everyone's opted in here. No one's opted out. And then the last time Alabama was in this position, they played Michigan, who's now been in the last 2 playoffs. But they played Michigan in 2019. And the MVP of that game, was Jerry Jeudy, who would go on to be a first-round draft pick. He didn't opt out. He played. He opted in. He had a huge game, and he went in round 1. A guy who did opt out, who chose not to play, who didn't think the game was a big deal, didn't think the game could help him, was Trevon Diggs. Diggs went on, and he's had a great NFL career. It didn't hurt Diggs not to play in this game in terms of his NFL career, but where it may have hurt him was the draft, because he didn't go in the first round. He wasn't a day 1 selection. Who would have guessed that Trevon Diggs, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, he doesn't make as much money as Jerry Jeudy does. Jeudy makes more money than Diggs, even though I think we all would admit that Diggs is a better player than Jeudy in the NFL right now. Judy's fine. He's good. But Diggs is one of the best. But he's making less money than Jerry Jeudy. And the reason is because Diggs didn't go in the first round. Jeudy did play in a game like this. He opted in. He played great. He was a first-round pick. I think it's a great thing to bring up to the team that there is a lot of value you can create for yourself by playing in this game and showing out. And one of the best games that a Nick Saban team has ever played during the entire dynasty is the 2010 Citrus Bowl, in a game that, quote, didn't really matter. And yet, to this day, Alabama fans bring up that game as one of the very best performances by a Nick Saban team throughout the dynasty. So there is a lot to play for here. And I think you're going to see a pretty fired-up Alabama team on Saturday that wants to prove to the college football world that, hey, maybe we aren't vintage Alabama, but we're still a pretty good football team.
No doubt. Moving right after the game, let's start with that Saturday night. There's been some consternation, I guess, from the fan standpoint about certain staff members. Coach Saban has obviously kept everything above board, and he's obviously said all the right things. Do you expect there to be any major changes this offseason? And if so, just from your own conjecture or reporting, some of the things that you might see in the coming weeks after the game?
Right. Well, first of all, there's always turnover. I mean, the real story, guys, is if there's no turnover. That would be a real story because Alabama staff has turnover every single season. Now, as we know, both coordinators returned this year from last year. But in terms of the overall staff, 10 on-the-field assistants, there's always turnover. There's already been one move as safeties coach Charles Kelly's moved on to Colorado as a promotion to become the defensive coordinator under Deion Sanders. So that's one. I think there'll be more. I personally don't believe Bill O'Brien will be back for a couple of reasons. But first of all, and this is really public knowledge, not me, I mean, Bill O'Brien's contract expires. It's up February 1st. It hasn't been extended, probably a mutual thing. I think Bill O'Brien just prefers the NFL. Makes a lot of sense. I know I would. You certainly get more vacation time, and that's just reason number one. So I expect Bill O'Brien to move on. That would probably happen after the bowl game, whether immediately or maybe around the second signing day. But at some point in January, I think Bill O'Brien will move on. I think there's a good chance Pete Golding won't be back in terms of Pete Golding being snatched up by someone else as either defensive coordinator or even head coach somewhere. I think that's possible. So I don't think it's a certainty that Pete Golding would be back. But in terms of like, hey, what we're really guessing, we know Charles Kelly's gone. I suspect Bill O'Brien will be gone. And beyond that, you can expect more change because there almost always is. But, with the defensive coordinator spot, I can see him retained and I can see him moving on both. That one's going to be interesting to watch.
Always good stuff. Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com. Also the Locked On Bama podcast. Jimmy, always appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon. But thanks for your time today.
Hey, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com, always giving us some very good information there on the Crimson Tide as we are in game week. Alabama getting ready for Kansas State. And I read it several times this week about Bill O'Brien, just the possibility of maybe going back to Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Obviously, they're having the issues on offense. Would he be a good fit there?
Yeah, this is, I think, kind of, if you can have a nice way to let somebody go from a job and a really nice landing spot, this is it. You have a situation with a guy whose scheme, Bill O'Brien's scheme, to me, does not mesh with what you need, number one, with Alabama and college football right now, just in general. You need creative play calling. He doesn't seem to show that as of right now. In the NFL, you need great scheming. All the creativity and whatnot is really good, but you just need a good scheme, good plan, because everybody's good on that level. To go back to the NFL is one thing. To go back to the Patriots, who've looked awful offensively this year, with the separation from the Patriots and Josh McDaniels, we've seen what Mac Jones looked like in his second year as compared to his first year. So this would be a perfect scenario of him going right back to a place where he was before. Both head coaches have tremendous amount of respect for each other between Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, probably the best two to ever do it at their respective positions. So, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. And the fact that Bill O'Brien was considered a top candidate at a lot of these college football jobs. And that cycle has seemed to come and go. And nobody has picked up Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien has said yes to nobody else. So makes it seem like he's at least making himself available for upcoming NFL jobs if that were to present itself.
Yep. So you're going to, like Jimmy said, expect that probably to happen sometime in the month of January following the bowl game. But that's been the talk a lot this season of how Alabama fans would like to see some different coordinators. And who knows what will happen at the defensive coordinator position, as Jimmy was saying. I agree with him there. I could see Pete Golding staying another year, or I could see a new defensive coordinator for Alabama next year.
Yeah, and it'd be kind of crazy if Bill Belichick gets his old offensive coordinator back in New England, and Nick Saban gets his old defensive coordinator back in Tuscaloosa. If a Jeremy Pruitt wants to make his way back, now this is no reporting. I haven't talked to anybody. I have no clue, but it would be interesting to see if that happens, because I think both people were really liked and respected in those situations. Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien, that worked in New England. Went to some Super Bowls. And Jeremy Pruitt in Alabama, that worked, and they have a couple of rings because of that. So I think it could be a marriage for both football programs as they move forward. Obviously, lots to go between now and then, but as Jimmy said, I do expect there to be a lot of turnover. We already know of one coach, Coach Kelly, who's gone, and I expect there to be more.
Yep. Appreciate Jimmy Stein, Bama Insider, joining us again. We'll continue all week to preview the Sugar Bowl between Alabama and Kansas State. We'll look at the TCU Michigan game as well as Ohio State Georgia. We'll preview both of those games. Here's some audio on TCU. We'll do that when we come back here on this day after Christmas edition of WKXX Live.
The Press Box.
We continue on this Monday afternoon. WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9, also WKXX.com. Chase and Gerhard here with you. Our phone number, 256-413-1029, if you'd like to call in and be a part of the show today, 256-413-1029. We've been talking about Alabama, Kansas State happening Saturday. Also this week, we've got the Fiesta Bowl that will feature TCU and Michigan, the 2 and 3. And then number 1, Georgia, number 4, Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. A couple of good games here. We'll start with TCU, Michigan. TCU's kind of been this team this year that we thought, well, is the committee going to keep them out of the playoffs? Mm-hmm. They let them in and they never go back out, even losing the Big 12 championship game to Kansas State. TCU remains the number 3 seed. And they've got Michigan, and this Michigan team has a playoff game under their belt. Last year, they lost to Georgia, but Jim Harbaugh has turned Michigan around. They've beat Ohio State the last 2 years. Yep. This year, very convincingly. I think this is this could be a good matchup. I think Michigan is a little better than TCU, but TCU's been this dream team this year. Can they put it together on a huge stage?
It felt like about 6 times during the regular season, I was like, TCU's run ends here. TCU's run ends here.
Yeah.
It ends here. And it just didn't end until the very end. And like you said, even though they lost the Big 12 championship, they still got into the college football playoff. And so I think that you just can't rule it out. Football is such a crazy thing because it's not like baseball, basketball, or hockey where those sports are series. You know, your better team's going to win 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7. Football's a one-game crazy sample size. And the fact that Michigan, let's keep in mind that they won't have Blake Corum as their running back. He got hurt towards the end of the year, ended up having surgery. Now their backup, Edwards, has done a great job. I'm with you. I think Michigan's a better team. But I think the football guys just keep telling you, hey, just don't count on TCU, because every time that we count them out, it feels like they were able to do something. And a lot of that is based upon if you have a strong leader that can really get things done, and a guy that players can rally behind, it makes it easier, especially when that guy touches the ball every single play. Yeah. And TCU's got one of those guys. They end up going all the way to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, whether you believe in that decision or not by the committee. But you know, TCU was able to rally behind Max Duggan, and he's been able to kind of be their rally horse. And so you don't necessarily need a great team when you have the guy that's touching the ball every snap being probably one of the guys that wants it the most and brings you that fire. So, yes, player 1 to player 85, Michigan has the much, much better football team, and they're playing really well heading into this one. But, you know, I'm kind of done doubting TCU's ability to maybe pull off an upset.
Yeah, and Max Duggan, a guy that we've talked about. Obviously, he was in New York at the Heisman presentation. Has had a good season. Has led his team on some comebacks. Has done a great job leading this team. He said, you know, they're not just here. You know, they're not just we're in the playoffs. They're going to win it.
Yeah, there are certain teams. You think back to a team like Washington when they got in a few years ago, and some others where it's almost a destination to get to the playoff because this is the very first time TCU has ever even just gotten here. But they're a little bit different because it's not just lip service. I believe that they believe it. I believe that they think, you know, we are one of the 4 best teams, and we're 8 quarters away from a national championship. I think that they believe that about themselves. And so their mindset has been a little bit different. They're not just happy to be here. They're not just, you know, happy to humdrum. Oh, yeah, we rub shoulders with the big boys. We rub shoulders with the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Georgias. They're coming here with the expectation that they want to win. And their leader has been saying that. That's exactly what you want to hear out of the leader.
It really is. And here he is talking about this. Just not just being happy to be here.
You know, being a team in the first year in the playoff, a lot of people probably would be just happy to make it. But I think, you know, Coach Kaz and Coach Dykes have done a tremendous job of, you know, you're going there to win. It's going to be tough, but, you know, this isn't a vacation. You know, you can have all the fun you want, but it'll be a lot more fun if we win. And I think that's what matters most to us, and I know that's what our guys want. more than anything. So that's kind of where our focus is right now.
And that's a good focus to have heading into the Fiesta Bowl coming up this Saturday. Trevius Hodges Tomlinson spoke on Max Duggan, just the leadership that he's brought to this team this year. To go this far, you've got to have guys on the team who are leading, and you can just tell that Max Duggan is one of those guys.
Yeah, he certainly is. And you just look back at his previous few games. I won't bore you with a bunch of numbers, but in the game against Baylor when they won 29-28, he was 24 of 35, 327 yards, scored a touchdown in that game. In the last game of the regular season against Iowa State, he had 3 touchdowns in the game. In the game against Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, I know they lost the game, but he was 251 yards through the air, 110 on the ground. He's one of those guys, he will get it done. However, he threw for 124 yards one game, and he threw for 300 yards another game. He's had to rush for 50 yards and rush for 100 plus. He's one of these guys that can just get it done in all types of ways, and he certainly has earned his players and his teammates respect. And the guy you just talked about, Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, plays defense. He sees him every single day and talks about what the kind of leader he is.
Max, man, he's a football player. Like, you can't just call everybody a football player. Max is a football player. Like, he's gonna give his all every play that he gets a chance to. He's gonna push the extra mile. You tackle him, he gonna give you the extra push just to try to get that extra yard, no matter how big of a defender you are to him. I mean, Max is one of those guys. Last minute you want to get the ball in his hands. You want to be able to say, Max, do what you do, because he's that type of player. And man, as far as that, I feel like he's very vocal. Quarterbacks, they have to be. He leads in a great way, but I feel like, me personally, his best leading is how he plays football.
So high praise there from Tomlinson on the leadership brought by the quarterbacks. Max Duggan and TCU faces off against Michigan on Saturday afternoon. You got Ohio State, Georgia, the 1 versus the 4. We talked. Is Ohio State deserving of this 4 seed? We'll find out of how they match up with Georgia. Out of these 2 games, which is the better matchup, do you think?
Oh, TCU. The TCU Michigan game is a lot better to me. I think TCU can give them more of a fight. I think Michigan, without having Blake Corum in the game, is a little bit susceptible, so we'll see how it will play out. To me, Georgia's head and shoulders above Ohio State. And the last time I saw Ohio State, they were at home getting trounced by 20 plus.
Yeah.
And now you mean to tell me Jackson Smith and Jigma, they're one of the top receivers, is completely out of the game. They're one of their star running backs completely out of the game. He has injuries elsewhere. This is a team I didn't think deserved to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
Much less playing against the defending champion and the better team. Oh, the better game easily to me is TCU and Michigan. I'm more excited to see that one. Now, Ohio State can come in there because they have C.J. Stroud, because they have a Heisman Trophy candidate there at quarterback. He can make some things happen. But I expect Kirby Smart to have a tremendous game plan against their offense. And we've seen what Michigan can do against their defense. And I expect Stetson Bennett and company to possibly be able to expose them there as well. So I won't be a bit surprised if this game looks a lot like Michigan-Ohio State.
I think so too. Georgia's really good. And who knows if Ohio State is that 4th best team in the country. We got to get to some NFL talk coming up next. The Broncos making a coaching change and much more as we continue on this Monday afternoon, day after Christmas, as we roll on here on WKXX Live. Much more to come next. It is WKXX Live here on Fox Sports 102.9. Jason Gerhard here with you. Some news out of the NFL today. The Broncos have fired Nathaniel Hackett in his first season as head coach. 4-11 start for Denver, and Hackett is no longer the head coach there. This is one of those situations where the NFL makes me laugh sometimes because there's they're 11-4. Let me pull up their schedule. I think 2 games left. They got 2 games left in the regular season. They could have waited to the end of the season. But yesterday's loss was just so bad. Sometimes you just got to have a knee-jerk reaction. 51-14 loss to the LA Rams. And it's one of those, I think, that Nathaniel Hackett was not a head coach going into the situation. And I think that they tried to use Nathaniel Hackett. You might remember last year, there was some talk that maybe Aaron Rodgers would be a Denver Bronco. And so they hired Nathaniel Hackett because they thought, getting him out of the Green Bay organization, that would be a nice little landing spot if Aaron Rodgers wanted to demand a trade and make his way over to the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos seem to be, quote unquote, a quarterback away. And they've said this about a lot of teams. They said this about the Broncos when Peyton Manning got there. Yeah. They said that about the Tampa Bay Bucks when Tom Brady got there. Both situations, they were right. They're a quarterback away. They come in, championship. They thought that Nathaniel Hackett could get there with Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't happen, but Russell Wilson happens. So you're expecting Russell Wilson's tenure with the Broncos to look a lot like Peyton Manning's tenure with the Broncos. Get in, MVP type guy who's been to the Super Bowl before, can get you right back there. Lots of skill players. Jerry Jeudy, former Alabama quarterback, one of those receiver, one of those guys. Patrick Surtain, former Alabama corner, one of those guys as well. And it just never materialized. Yeah. And they looked lost, and they looked inept at times. And you're paying all this money to Russell Wilson, and he just looked lost. And so this is one of the situations where I think if they lose a 7-point game, he still has a job to the end of the year, gets fired at the end of the year. But this is a knee-jerk response where you lose 51-14, and somebody's got to get canned, and he's the one who got canned. Russell Wilson had some post-game comments, as they do after the game, and he just talked about this embarrassing loss that he and his team just suffered.
Yeah, I mean, they just haven't been able to score or look good in any realm offensively. And to the quarterback's credit, he does take the blame. Now, I'll give you some context on the front end. This is after the game. So this is before the decision to fire Coach Hackett was had, and Russell Wilson taking a lot of blame on himself for the poor 14-point performance in the blowout yesterday.
The bottom line is that I let us down, and it can't happen. And it's been disappointing. We've had some really good moments this year. We've had some really bad moments. We've had some in between, and we got to create consistency. And that's the biggest thing that we're missing right now is that consistency. We've had some good, like I said, last time we were out, we were able to come back against the Chiefs and everything else. We felt like that was going to be hopefully be the case tonight, and unfortunately it wasn't. Well, I think we're all frustrated. I think we're all frustrated because we feel like we can be better. We feel like we're capable of being better. We feel like we've had some good moments and all that, but nobody wants to put out what we put out today. That was terrible. And that was not us. That was not very good. As a leader, as a person that's trying to overcome the obstacles of it all, obviously. Especially of a night like tonight, is just being in the moment, and trying to stay together as much as we could in those moments. And so, the line, like I said, they battled their butts off. They you never want to get in the games like that, where you're trying to catch up like that. And so, we've caught up before behind 27. Guys were believing that was going to happen today, still even, and then just the game got away from us. So that was the reality of the game.
Tough loss for the Denver Broncos yesterday, and it has been made known that Jerry Rossberg, he is the senior assistant coach. He was hired during the season by Nathaniel Hackett to help him with clock management strategy. He is now the interim head coach.
Yeah, that was after a dismal game one, and it was happening on Monday Night Football. Just, you can't have that situation. I forgot who their opponent was that day, but it was just awful. And then there was talk that, head coaches have to deal with a lot. And you have to sit in that seat sometimes to know how that goes.
Yeah.
So where a lot of times I just don't understand the hiring process when it comes to head coaches, because a lot of times you'll take guys who have never been in those game situations. It's one thing to answer questions from a podium at a press conference. It's a different thing altogether to manage your clock, to manage your timeouts, to know where you are in the game. That is a feel thing. And if you haven't done it in the high school level, on the college level, on the professional level, if you haven't done it, it's just a really hard job. And Nathaniel Hackett had to find out really early on. And because of the fact he was a victim of the success of the Broncos early on, because there was so much excitement about the Broncos this year, think about how many standalone games they had. Games on Monday night, games on Thursday, Sunday night games. Most of their first 10 games, I think 6 or 7 of them were standalone situations, or that 3 o'clock window where there's only a few games on. So you had this huge spotlight at all of your failures because everybody thought this team would be really good. And so it turns around and the complete opposite happens. And now here you are in a situation where you have to fire your head coach because of the embarrassment he's been over the course of time. This is the silver lining, though. If you are going to be a head coach in the NFL, if you're going to fail, this is the one part that is the silver lining. He will get paid the entirety of a 4-year contract. I don't know the numbers. I'm still looking that up. He had 15 games as a head coach. He can go to the TV booth and go get a TV job for a little while, go to college and go help out at college if he wants to stay in football.
Yeah.
And get paid the entirety of his 4-year contract because the NFL has this much money where they could just fire coaches. They sent out a memo last week to NFL coaches, NFL owners, just letting you know, pointing out that you paid over $800 million to fired coaches. It's not a good look in an economy that we have right now that, that this is the case, but, they can do that. And now here they're doing it again. And Nathaniel Hackett, the one silver lining is he'll get paid handsomely for this firing and be coaching 15 games.
Yeah, that's insane. But Broncos will be looking for a new head coach. They should have great clock management over the next few weeks, though, as Jerry Ronsberg takes over. We will jump to a break here, hour 2 on the other side. Stick around.
Player they can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani.
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
It is WKXX Live. It is a Monday afternoon, day after Christmas, here on Fox Sports 102.9. Chase and Gerhard with you. Our phone number is 256-413-1029. Would love to hear from you here on this Monday, 256-413-1029. As we get into hour two, coming up, we'll talk more NFL. We talked about the coaching change we saw. We'll talk about some of the action we saw over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We will be grading SEC coaches from this year. And we'll start off the hour talking some college basketball as new AP Top 25 is out. We've got conference play beginning this week, which is very exciting for college basketball fans. So we'll start with this week's AP poll. And the Purdue Boilermakers, 12-0, they get the top spot in the AP Top 25, followed by the other undefeated team, 13-0, UConn.
Yeah, and Purdue, keep in mind, they were not ranked to begin the season.
Yeah.
UConn, nobody thought a lot of UConn going into this year as well. So we're seeing, a lot of surprises. We're seeing some things that we thought we would see. We thought we would see an improved Tennessee team and others, and we'll get to the rest of the poll. But these are kind of two surprises. Here we are a third of the way through the season, and those two basically splitting the 60 votes to make up the AP poll.
Yeah, so Purdue, the top spot. UConn, we saw them against Alabama in the Phil Knight Invitational. They beat Alabama. They're 13-0, so they are 2. Houston is up at number 3. Kansas 4. Arizona 5. They're in the top 5. Then you've got Texas 6. Tennessee 7. Alabama 8, Arkansas 9, and Gonzaga 10.
Yeah, obviously a lot of people thought that Tennessee would be improved this year after last year, and they've certainly proven so, and they're the highest ranked SEC team coming in there at number 7. I'm really interested to see, once we get into conference play, how these conferences will align, because we think the SEC is going to be tough. Now, there are some games last week that might have said otherwise as it relates to that. I want to see how the Pac-12 continues to play, because that'll kind of give you a pretty good feel about how good Arizona actually is. And then the defending champions in Kansas, how good are they really going into another year? We know Texas is good. We know Kansas, we think Kansas is pretty solid. We'll see how the conferences will align, but it looks to me that the SEC will be right there in the mix as far as one of the better conferences, with 2 teams right there in the top 10.
Yep. UCLA 11, Baylor 12, Virginia 13, Miami 14, Wisconsin 15, Indiana 16, Duke 17, TCU 18, Kentucky 19, and Auburn 20.
How about those Miami Hurricanes?
Yeah.
Moving on up in the poll there. We saw this a little bit last year. Miami's always a really athletic team. You think about, back in the day when they had guys like Jim Larinaga coaching them and whatnot. They've always been able to put together a nice team. That right now they're on a nice little run, and most recently knocked off Virginia, who, Virginia has won a championship recently. They were in the top 5 a little bit earlier this year, so knocked them off. Miami now 12-1, so they're a really big surprise. Out of those teams, you talked about a Gonzaga team that played in Birmingham not that long ago against Alabama. We expect them to once again have a solid season, even though they have 3 losses on the year. We expect them to win their conference. They don't play in necessarily the greatest conference, but it's respectable. Keep an eye on UCLA. I think it's a team that, out of the Pac-12 that we talked about earlier, could make some noise there.
I think so too. Mississippi State 21, Xavier, New Mexico tied for 22, West Virginia 24, and then everybody's favorite to start the year, North Carolina, is at 25. They're finally back in the poll.
Yeah, finally crept back in there. They're the only team with 4 losses back in the poll. I think a lot of people had some hope for North Carolina going into this year, especially after making the national championship game a season ago, knocking off Duke and giving Coach K his final loss of his illustrious career. And shout out to New Mexico, a team that's that hasn't been ranked for many years. I think 8 years is what I read back in the poll here. So New Mexico, the Lobos are in. Auburn's still hanging on in there.
Yeah.
Gotta win over Washington, a team that we think will be okay. Lost against USC. But the true test for Auburn will come in conference play. I mean, they played an okay schedule in the preseason and played a few conference teams, but once conference play rolls around, we'll find out the kind of how good the Tigers really are.
So SEC play, really all conference play starts across college basketball this week. As far as the SEC, on Wednesday, conference play opens up, and there's a good slate of games. You've got number 7 Tennessee. They are at Ole Miss. Number 19 Kentucky at Missouri. You've got Florida at number 20 Auburn. Alabama is at number 8 Alabama at number 21 Mississippi State. And number 9 Arkansas at LSU. That is a great slate of games on night one.
Yeah, and I'll start with that Auburn game. I think that Auburn game was really important for the Tigers to be able to get out to a solid start. Florida's a team, if you look at their record this year, not that great, but I mean, this is a team that can challenge Auburn really well going into this upcoming week of games. I shouldn't say weekend because they'll start to play this kind of one day during the week and then one day over the weekend as conference play rolls around. But you have to look at the matchup between two teams that are going in with a number beside their name, Alabama and Mississippi State. I think it will get a lot of people's attention this week as we start conference play.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it should be a great season of SEC basketball. The Jacksonville State Gamecocks, they're in action. Their final non-conference game tomorrow, 6 o'clock there at Pete Matthews Coliseum as they welcome in Georgia's Southwestern. And then Friday, they'll begin ASUN play, taking on the North Alabama Lions, Gerhard, who are coming off a win against Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, there'll definitely be some motivation there for Jacksonville State. The one game they played against a Power 5 opponent wasn't that great against Utah, but a chance at redemption. And JSU's always played really, really well at home. We expect this conference to be good once again this season. We know how it all worked out last year, where JSU ended up being able to get a spot in the NCAA tournament after winning the regular season championship, and then Bellarmine, who was ineligible last year, made it. So I'm really interested to see how Jacksonville State plays when ASUN play rolls around, because I expect the conference to be a lot better. But really tough date there to start off conference play against the UNA team that will come in with zero fear.
Yeah, you got North Alabama Friday, then Monday Jacksonville, a team who put JSU out of the ASUN tournament last year. They ended up losing to Bellarmine in the championship, but you got North Alabama, Jacksonville on the road, Liberty on the road, and Bellarmine back at home is your first 4 conference games.
Yeah, you'll find out really quickly about what this Jacksonville State team is. Obviously, going into the year, we knew, and we talked about it ad nauseum, about 5 starters gone. Not 1, not 2, not just your leading scorer, not a couple of guys at the bench. All 5 starters from a year ago gone. You bring in some new players. You bump up some players that have been there. Now you're trying to create chemistry and cohesiveness. Did those games in the preseason? Did those games in exhibition? Did those games in non-conference? Did it do enough to get the chemistry going for when it really matters right now? And we'll find out soon enough.
Yep. So you can hear Jacksonville State, Georgia Southwestern coming up tomorrow night, 6 p.m. right here on Fox Sports 102.9. 5:30 airtime for Mike Paris and the Gamecock Sports Network. But lots of basketball, college basketball coming at you this week. And we will be keeping tabs on all that as conference play begins across college basketball. The fun time of the year. We like these non-conference games. And we've actually had a lot of good quality non-conference games. You get a lot of these blowouts, but we've seen Alabama-Houston, and we've seen Alabama-Gonzaga, Auburn-Memphis. I mean, we've seen a lot of quality games.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it too. We've seen some of these teams play mid-major teams, good mid-major teams that we expect to see on the bracket coming up in March. And we've seen some of these teams play just really good Power 5 opponents. I think Alabama's schedule speaks for itself. They've already played, obviously, Gonzaga. They've already played UConn and others. Meanwhile, Auburn, they've already played a team like Winthrop, who we expect to be back in the big dance coming up this year. A team like Colgate, who's perennially in the big dance as well. So I think each team has gotten a really strong sample size, and that's not even considering teams like UAB and Sanford. We talked about UNA a little bit, South Alabama and others that are expected to have some improvements based on last year. So I expect it to be a really fun really fun Division I slate of basketball over these next few months as these teams get ready for conference play.
Yep, and so we'll keep tabs on college basketball. We'll jump to a break right now. Coming up, we're going to be grading SEC football coaches from this year. That is on the other side.
At the YMCA.
We are back on a Monday afternoon, Fox Sports 102.9. Jason Gerhard with you as we work our way through this day after Christmas. And it is the last week of 2022. Hard to believe, wrapping up another year. And we've seen a lot of good stuff in 2022. We've seen a lot of great college football that we have spent a lot of time talking about. And so I thought it'd be cool for us to grade the coaches of the SEC based on performance this season here in 2022. So we are going to go in alphabetical order. And I realized that I was missing Missouri on my list that I typed up. So we will add that into our list as appropriate. We'll go alphabetical order through the SEC coaches. and give a grade on how we think this year went for said coach. So we will start alphabetically with the Alabama Crimson Tide. What grade would you give Nick Saban based on this 2022 season?
I'll give him a solid A. And the reason I'm not going A+ or A- is because of a few issues. Going into the season, one of the things for Alabama was they needed to fix the run game. They did that. Got Jahmyr Gibbs in the portal, fixed that run game. Yeah, he had Bryce Young, and yeah, he had Will Anderson. Any year that doesn't end in a championship is a meltdown for Alabama fans. But for me, what I saw was this team had two great leaders, but a lot of questions along in different positions, especially the wide receiver group, which never really materialized to the fullest degree that it possibly could. At the same time, too, I'm going to take Coach Saban in totality. They lost those games, very last play of the game, the two games that they lost. Edge of the playoff, considering their outdated, or considering what happened at the end of those football games. And then to do what he did on signing day, it shows the passion is still there, and he can still build. So I know it's all within the same calendar year, but I'll give Saban a solid A.
This is going to be surprising, but I'm going to give him a B+.
Okay.
And a lot of it is not him, but he is the head coach, so therefore he gets, he gets the blame. He's in charge of this staff and this team. Not a lot of adjustments were made in game.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama could have won both of the games they lost, I think, if adjustments had been made.
Yeah.
By his coordinators.
Right.
But he is the head coach, and everything goes through him, as he has said. And so I put that blame on him a little bit. But there were some moments that things could have been different and done differently, and they weren't. But overall, and again, I think with this recruiting class, it shows just how great of a coach he is. But this season specifically, and because of who's around him, I give him a B+.
Will Reichert makes a field goal, and Mason Taylor drops a 2-point conversion. Are we giving him a B+?
Yes, because of the Texas A&M game.
Okay.
Because of the Texas game.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because, I mean, there was clear issues in...
outside of the two losses.
Right, outside of the two losses.
Yeah.
The other games that were close.
Yeah.
Arkansas game at some time, especially in the second quarter.
It's consistent. It's consistent. It was one of those things where, and I know fans are probably doing this in their own heads as they listen. I just want people to make sure, and I think you did a good job illustrating this, it wasn't all results based.
Right.
Because the margins of error were very, very small.
Yes.
But you bring up good points about even in the games they won, not necessarily the best Bama teams out there.
Because I think of the Texas game. The defense did not adjust at all.
Right.
First of all, if his name is slipping me, starting quarterback at Texas, Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
If Quinn Ewers had stayed in the game, Alabama's defense just wasn't adjusting to what he was doing.
Right.
And same thing with Texas A&M, who was a horrible team this year. The defense just couldn't adjust to them. And so I think there was some issues that they will get figured out in the offseason. But yeah, I look past the Tennessee and LSU game.
Right.
I think of mostly Texas A&M. And some of the Arkansas game as well.
Yeah. And I think so too. And I think it's a good job of illustration there.
Sam Pittman of Arkansas, I'm going to give him a C.
Okay.
They should have been much better than they were this year. And I know they dealt with injury and everything with KJ Jefferson, but I'm going to give Sam Pittman a C, just not living up to any expectation they had.
I'm going to go one step a little lower. I'm going C-. This is the team that was picked third in the SEC West. As you mentioned, KJ Jefferson was back. I know he dealt with some issues with injuries and whatnot, but they were picked third right behind Alabama. It's one of those situations, in my opinion, that Arkansas, they found it, but they didn't find it consistently enough. This was the chance for them to take that next step this year, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Even with a talented football team, a really big, really talented offensive line, guys that will go play on the next level and be really productive, I'll give Coach Pittman a C+, C-.
All right, so with Auburn, we have Brian Harsin and Cadillac Williams. You can give a grade for both of those.
Yeah, I was going to say I need to separate it because the gap is the gap of the Grand Canyon. To me, Brian Harsin is an F. And I just don't know how we can qualify any other way. The team just did not respond to him, did not respond to his message. I think he did a good job of staying on message. It just never translated to the field. What we heard on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday just never really transpired there on the field. I'll give Cadillac Williams a B+, an A for the energy part of it, but at the same time, they didn't win those games. They went 1-2 when he was the head coach. But to me, he was a first-year guy doing it as well. Right. So I feel that even feels a little bit unfair to him. Yeah. So anywhere between a B+, A-, I'm okay with. But for Coach Harsin, it's got to be an F.
Yeah, definitely an F for Harsin. I'm going to give Cadillac an A. You mentioned the energy. He was put in a weird situation. Mm-hmm. He's never been a head coach.
Right.
He probably doesn't know what a head coach is supposed to do because he's been locked in on coaching the running backs. And so with what he was given, I think he did a good job of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give him an A. Yeah, they didn't win the games, but I think he got a lot out of those guys and did well for the situation that they put him in.
Right. And just like I gave Nick Saban a little bit of credit for being able to keep it rolling on signing day, I think what Auburn was able to do but on signing day, that momentum was started and created and helped push Auburn into a top 20 class because of a lot of what Carnell was able to maintain there at the end of the regular season.
All right, next up, Florida head coach Billy Napier. First season, they're leading the Gators.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I have to temper this a little bit. I'm going to go C-, and thought about going just a regular C, but I'll go with C-. 3-5 in the SEC is where I have a stickler, and it's not necessarily the 4 games that I'll mention. It's not the Tennessee, not Kentucky, not LSU, not Georgia. It's Vanderbilt. That's the one that went from a C to a C- in my eyes. All these lofty expectations after Florida beat Utah to begin the year, I thought that was a little bit of fool's gold. I think neutral site or in Utah, Florida loses that game. In the swamp in early September, it is hot and it's sweaty, and a lot of those guys came out. I thought that was kind of, an iffy situation. So, yeah, I think a lot of that beginning game was not who they were, but they were never able to capitalize. But I can't unsee that Vandy game. That's the reason why he goes C-.
I'm going to go D.
Wow.
I just was not impressed with this first year at all. The start, you couldn't have started any better with that win over Utah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that got a lot of people excited, and then it was just for the rest of the year.
Right.
Like nothing special really happened. And you mentioned the Vanderbilt game. So I think it was not a great start for Billy Napier. He had a great recruiting class. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that we could be talking next year at this time, maybe a B+ type coach.
Right.
I really do, because I think he's a good coach. It's just, it was a great start and nothing really special in between there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go D for Billy Napier. Kirby Smart.
This is my only one, and he's the valedictorian of this group. He's getting an A, not an A, but an A+ for this season. I mean, think about everything they had to go through. 15 draft picks in the NFL. Basically, the entire defense is now gone. He had so much drop-off, but he kept that hunger. He was, to me, in the most unique situation for a team and for a coach and for a squad and a program that, number one, hadn't won in 40 years. And then coming back and winning a national championship, he was in the most unique situation where he had a team that was hungry. You don't see that ever. Nick Saban always talks about fighting the complacency and all of that. He had a team that was actually hungry because they weren't ranked in the top 3, or they were, I think, 3rd, going into the preseason. He kept that hunger alive. He didn't have to go poach the transfer portal. Kept all of his guys, kept Stetson Bennett going, brought Bowers, that defense rolling. Outside of a few kind of iffy games at the middle of the year against Missouri and I think Ball State or Kent State, one of the two, there was the only ones that were kind of here and there. But think about the Oregon game to start the season and think about the way they ended the season.
Yeah.
He is hands down, to me, the best coach in this league right now. Yeah. And I got him at an A+.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I've got him at A+ as well. Kentucky's Mark Stoops, I gave him a C.
Okay.
Just average. They were expected to be better than they were.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hype around this Kentucky team coming into the year, and I think they were just average. And they kind of always end up just being average. You know, no matter what hype's on them, no matter who's on the field, I just feel like a Mark Stoops team is always average, so I gave him an average grade.
Yeah, and I have to go a little bit below average for a reason, because going into this year, they had some lofty expectations. I know that this year, you and myself and everybody else that follows the SEC, they were talking who was that next team in the SEC West. And it was Tennessee and Kentucky were considered the two teams in it. I think Kentucky got a lot more love because he was thinking, well, at least Kentucky could play some defense.
Yeah.
They can at least stop people. We didn't know Tennessee's offense would be what it was, and their defense to be pretty solid, but at least the offense we knew for Tennessee, but at least the defense for Kentucky we thought was going to be good. Until I saw the Tennessee game where they lost that game 44-6, and I was like, that's the one game that made me push it down just a hair to a C-. Played Georgia sturdy there towards the end. I know they lost their quarterback in Will Levis, which made them lose the Ole Miss game. Yeah. But to me, I'm going C- there for Coach Stoops.
All right. Brian Kelly, in his first season in LSU, what grade do you give him?
Same grade as Nick Saban, solid A for this football program. Embarrassing loss to Tennessee. I thought the wheels were going to roll off this team. Embarrassing loss to Florida State to begin the year. And I thought, ooh, this is kind of dicey.
Yeah.
Embarrassing start if you go before that in recruiting when he's faking an accent to sound like he's Southern. But he was able just to get the team rolling, to get the team together. And to me, the improvement in Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, throughout the course of the season, to me really showed the improvement of this football team. I'll give him a solid A for going into that championship game. I would have given it an A+ had they won the last game of the regular season and had they played Georgia a little bit better in the championship game. But a solid A for Brian Kelly's first start.
I give him an A as well. I did not think this LSU team was an SEC championship caliber team. And the fact that he was able to get them there despite that awful loss to start the year and the loss to Tennessee, despite those games, he was able to keep them motivated. He took risks, obviously, in that Alabama game, and it paid off for him. Not many coaches would say, we have the momentum right here. I think we can do this.
Right.
Not many coaches would do that. They kicked a field goal and go to another overtime. He took risk, and it paid off for him. I think he's going to do a tremendous job at LSU. Mike Leach, of course, we've talked a lot about Mike Leach over the last couple of weeks. As far as legacy, he is an A+ all the way.
Yeah.
Just what he's meant to college football and really what he's done at Mississippi State, 8-4 this year, winning the Egg Bowl for the first time in a couple of years. He had this Mississippi State program going in the right direction.
Yeah, he certainly did. I posthumously give him an A as well. And you think about the quarterback development that he's had over the course of his career, and even this past year with Will Rogers, one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. As you mentioned, he won the Egg Bowl. He won his final game as a head coach, which is so fitting and kind of amazing there. Really, really solid team. I think that they are on a nice platform for their upcoming bowl game as they head into the bowl game this year, and then as they move forward with Coach Arnett and being able to continue to solidify who they are. I think he left them in great hands and a man that we lost too early.
Yeah, absolutely. The other team in Mississippi, Lane Kiffin of the Ole Miss Rebels. What do you grade Lane Kiffin?
I'm actually going to go a B- here. He was trending towards an A at the beginning of the season. That team looked unstoppable. Jackson Dart, I think the way he handled the quarterback situation was a masterclass between Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier. I think Auburn could have took some pointers there instead of just naming a starter, letting both guys go, waiting till week 3 to make a decision there. Quinshon Junkins, their running back, Zach Evans, their other running back, had a really good running team going. When we think Lane Kiffin, we think offense everywhere. We think passing the ball everywhere. This is a team that ran it for 229 yards per game and rushed it for 261. They were actually better on the ground as far as yardage goes than through the air. He adjusted this team. The Portal King made it work. He brought all these new guys together, made it work. But just some ugly losses towards the end and just not good performances towards the end of the season makes me shift. I was gonna go B. I'm gonna go one gear lower and go B-.
I'm gonna give him a C+.
Okay.
They just kind of seemed average, especially towards the end of the year. They lost some games they should not have lost.
Right.
He and I know his name was tied to Auburn. I don't know if that was a distraction, but the team was not good at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And they let games slip away. They let that LSU game slip away up 17-3. I mean, so I'm going to go C+ for Lane Kiffin, but I agree with you. He had the potential to be an A.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
and maybe in the future if he picks up some more guys out of that portal. Not a good recruiting class for Lane though by far last week. Shane Beamer, South Carolina head coach. I'm going to go B for Shane Beamer.
Okay.
Just especially the way he ended the season.
Yeah.
And I mean he kept the guys going, playing hard through the whole year. Not a great start, had some ups and downs, but the way he coached the guys in the last couple of games really, really impressed me about Shane Beamer.
I like that. I like the grading, and I think it's fair. I'm going to go a little bit more positive. I'll go to A- with Shane Beamer. This is a team that was picked 5th in the SEC West and had a really solid year, really tough schedule as well. You take a look at their overall schedule. After they lost to Florida, 38-6 was the score there. They only beat Tennessee and beat Clemson after that. The way he was able to rally those guys, I think, shows that they have something to build on. I know they got one of the more talented quarterbacks in the transfer portal when Spencer Rattler came in. He ended up making that work, especially towards the end of the season. I think the team's rallied around him. I don't know if we will do report cards after the bowl games, but if he's able to go in and knock off Notre Dame, I think that I'll be able to give him a little bit more of a boost because to me to end the season off on a 3-game winning streak, especially with Tennessee, Clemson knocking off a good team in a bowl game, to me that'll go a really long way. But as we sit right now, I'll go A-, especially the way that he ended the year.
Yeah, I like that. Josh Heupel, what do you grade him?
I got to give him an A, solid A. Same grade as Nick Saban, as well as same grade as Brian Kelly. To be able to build off what they did last year. Last year, they had some holes defensively, but Hendon Hooker looked like, okay, we have something here at quarterback. He took Hendon Hooker to the next level, and then Fallon Jalen Hyatt, who has been the best wide receiver in the country, and then also Brew McCoy, who was also a really good wide receiver as well. Implemented that system, solidified themselves a little bit defensively as well. Hendon Hooker, obviously got injured. The wheels fell off a little bit there for Tennessee. But this is a team that when the committee had their first rankings, they were the number 1 team in the country, and there wasn't much beef about it. Nobody really said, I don't necessarily believe that. They came out firing on all cylinders. I know the wheels fell off a little bit, especially when you lose your starting quarterback. But to me, this is a beat Alabama for the first time in the ages. And so, that's the reason why I'll give them an A.
I'll give him an A as well for all the things you just said, and the quick turnaround I think for Tennessee has been impressive too. The fact that he's been able to turn this program around in the fashion that he has. I'll give him an A. Jimbo Fisher, I'm going to go D, and it was really tempting to go F, but I'm going to go D.
Go ahead.
D for disappointing because that's what he is. He's a fraud in college football.
The reason I'm teetering between D- and F. And the reason why is because of all the hype going in and all the talk going in, there hasn't been a coach, there hasn't been a program that has lost so much, I feel like, good graces with most of college football, considering how much yapping he did with the whole NIL and how much yapping he's continuing to do. And I can see if you're top of the stoop and you're playing well, but to not play well and to not solidify the quarterback position, I still have no idea what they're doing at quarterback. The game they lost to Appalachian State to me was the game, and kudos to Appalachian State. They came out and won it thanks to an East Alabama product and Cameron Peoples, who had a great game there in that matchup, former Central Clay Volunteer. But this to me is a situation where you can't come in as a top 5, top 10 team in the preseason and finish the way that this team did, and you not get a D-, possibly. I'm solidifying it. I'm going F for him.
Well, he deserves it.
Yeah, same grade as Brian Harsin. And I guarantee you, if he didn't have $95 million attached to him, he might not be the head coach right now. So I got to go F.
Clark Lee, Vandy. What do you grade him?
I'll go B+ here on Clark Lee. This is a guy that I didn't expect to win a single conference game. I thought that this team had a little bit had some ability, but to me, they were still going to be the bottom of the barrel of the SEC. Well, they ended up getting 2 wins in league play, beat Kentucky. Is part of the reason why I had to give a notch down to Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
So if I'm going knock down to Mark Stoops, I got to go notch up to the team that beat him. And I got to go a little bit for Clark Lee. I think they have something to build on. They're still a large way away from the top of the heap of the SEC. But where James Franklin had it, very respectable, very a team that can compete week to week. Yeah. I think Clark Lee's going in that direction.
I think so too. I'll give him a B. And I said since they hired him that he's the guy. He's the next best thing from James Franklin that they've had. I mean, he, like you said, he's got them competing. He's got them competitive. And for them to go out and win the games they did this year, hey, hats off to what the game plan and Clark Lee. So I'll give him a B. Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri, I'll go C. I mean, again, just average.
Yeah.
He lost some games he should have won, and then played close with Georgia. That loss to Auburn really hurt him. They should have won that one.
Yeah.
So I'll just go C, just average for Eli Drinkwitz.
I'm going same, just a solid C as well. I was going to go C minus. That Tennessee game was ugly, 66-24 in that matchup there. But they did knock off Arkansas to end the year. Nice little 2-game winning streak to end the season, and beat South Carolina as well. Played Auburn, as you mentioned. They should have won that game against Auburn. Played Georgia really strong back-to-back weeks. I think that's where they lost the season. Those two games that they feel like they probably should have won. They lost those 2 games, and things were really never the same after that. So, I'll go solid C right there with you. Kind of an average team, and finished about where we expected them to finish there with a 3-5 record in conference.
Yep. So those are our grades for all the SEC football coaches for this 2022 season. We'll jump to a break. We'll talk some NFL on the other side. Stick around. We are back here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Jason Gerhard with you. 256-413-1029. If you'd like to call in and be a part of the show, that is 256-413-1029. If you could want to be a part of the show this afternoon, you can give us a call. Would love to hear from you. NFL this weekend, quite a few games on Saturday, had some games yesterday as well. And what stood out to you in the weekend that was the NFL?
A lot of things. Number one, what in the world has happened to the Miami Dolphins? I mean, just in the past few weeks, we have seen this team make a complete turn, and I don't think they were ever going to win the division. I thought Buffalo was going to win the AFC East, but the fact that they scored no points in the second half and they were intercepted a bunch of times. Tua looks like he's not the same confident Tua that he was in the previous weeks. There's just been something off with this football team. And on the flip side of that, Green Bay. How about the Green Bay Packers, who basically have needed all the things that have needed to kind of break their way, have broken their way so far there in that matchup. The reason why the whole Bill O'Brien to the New England Patriots has been resurfacing is because the Patriots just cannot get anything going offensively. Yeah. And once again, that was the same case yesterday. Try to make a comeback against the Bengals. Couldn't get over the hump. Couldn't get it done. Then you have the situation with the Carolina Panthers, who are starting to look pretty solid here over the last few weeks. And Cowboys Eagles a little muted yesterday because they obviously didn't have Jalen Hurts there in the matchup. But a high scoring game, and shout out to the Cowboys. I think that the Cowboys are kind of putting themselves in position to where, if you think about this, maybe there's 2, 3, 4 handful of teams that could win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. You got to include Dallas in there.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's the time of the year we get to start talking about playoffs. What teams are you looking forward to seeing in the playoffs? Any surprises you think could make a run in the playoffs?
I think this year it won't be as many surprises. The only one I think, and I promise you I'm not speaking at a bias here, the only one I think, because when they play well, they actually do have a pretty solid unit that I think can make some noise. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we saw that in spurts yesterday. We saw it last week in the first half against Cincinnati. We saw it in Germany when they played the Seattle Seahawks. That's a team that their record doesn't necessarily indicate to me the peak of their football. Also, watch out for the Baltimore Ravens. They're continuing to win despite the fact that Lamar Jackson has been out. They're now 10-5 so far on the year. It's kind of hard to call Cincinnati a surprise because what they did last year going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. But they start off this year kind of in a bad place. They're kind of on a rut, but they've really turned it up here lately. I'm not necessarily sold on the Minnesota Vikings as much as everybody else. They've won a couple of games here, and I just don't necessarily think that they are as good as their 12-3 record indicates. Watch out for them a little bit. But the other teams that are right now competing in the NFC, I just don't have that much faith in. I don't have that much faith in the Giants. Yeah. I don't have that much faith in Washington. I don't have that much faith in Seattle. The 49ers, to me, can make some noise. To me, they're a pretty solid team. I think the Vikings are a little overinflated. I think the Bucs can make some noise in the NFC. Meanwhile, in the AFC, what is up with the Dolphins? And I think the Ravens and Bengals can make some noise.
Yeah. So the teams that have clinched postseason berths in the AFC, you've got the Bills from the AFC East, Chiefs AFC West, and then the Bengals and the Ravens. And for the NFC, teams that have clinched postseason berths, the Eagles, of course, Cowboys, the 49ers, and the Vikings.
Yeah, and I mean, going into the year, I think a lot of people had some questions about the 49ers. Because of Trey Lance, that didn't work out. Jimmy G came in. Now he's hurt. Now you're basically on your third string quarterback. We will see how long the Brock Purdy show can continue. So far, so good. He's looked good throughout the course of the season. When you talk about the division leaders so far, I think one of the big things that kind of sticks out is just how big of a lead Buffalo has. It looks like we're back to a collision course in the AFC between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs to possibly match up once again for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Obviously, last year, Bengals were in that spot, but, to get there, they had to play one another, and I expect them to play one another, once again this year. Jacksonville Jaguars have made some noise here recently that I think that they can make some noise and possibly get that division spot. The AFC South seems to be wide open with the Tennessee Titans losing to the Houston Texans. I think I called that game on Friday. It's one of those. To me, I believe that that the AFC South is wide open, and that's the team that can make a little bit of noise. But all the kind of usual suspects are the ones that you just named out of the AFC, especially with the Bills and Chiefs on top, and then the Vikings and Eagles. Even though I don't think the Vikings are as good as their record.
Yeah. So that's kind of what the playoff picture is looking like right now. We'll take a break, come back, preview Monday Night Football. That is coming up next.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watch.
It is WKXX Live. We're getting ready to wrap up on this Monday afternoon. Monday Night Football tonight. Chargers at Colts. We get another look at Jeff Saturday on a Monday night.
Yeah, this is. I know it's a point of consternation for you because you picked old Jeff Saturday a few times in the picks, and I know that you swore not to pick him again. And I picked him this week. I said hopefully the luck will run into Monday. And there's some reports out, some word out. Speaking of the Colts, that they're actually going to be looking at Jim Harbaugh whenever they're at the end of the year. They haven't obviously pledged to Jeff Saturday, and I don't think they will, especially after last week.
Yeah.
To moving forward, so that coaching job will be interesting to see if another big time college job opens up. But for this particular game, Colts back at home, embarrassing historic loss last week, letting up a whole bunch of points to the Minnesota Vikings. But you have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league coming into your building as Justin Herbert and company do so. Herbert and company 8-6 so far. A win would be really big for them. They can't win the division, obviously, too far behind the Chiefs and everybody else. However, they can get one of those wild card spots. So it's really big for them to be able to do so. Meanwhile, the Colts right now 4-9-1, basically out of the entire playoff scenario. Matt Ryan once again benched. So this is a really important game for the Chargers going into it, and we'll see if they can get it done here tonight.
Yep, so that is on ESPN at 7:15 against Chargers at the Colts. At this time of the year, a lot of awards go out for high school sports, and it's always exciting to see the 1 through 7A back in lineman of the year awards.
Yeah, the finalists all came out here recently, and there's a couple of guys that have ties to our local listening area that we wanted to shout out. Starting with the 4A back of the year, two nominees have local ties. Jacob Cornejo of Cherokee County, the running back who led that team all the way to the state championship game. Also Fluff Bothwell of Aniana, who had a fantastic year. Those are two of the three finalists for the back of the year. There's also some finalists for the lineman of the year in Class 4A. Tay Diamond, who is Cornejo's teammate over at Cherokee County, defensive lineman, and for the lineman of the year. And probably the favorite to win it, Raquise McKeldry of Anniston.
Yeah.
The Alabama signee is one of the three finalists there as well. The 3A back of the year, obviously one of the finalists. Everybody knew Jack Hayes would be one.
Yeah.
And I would think the guy that was going to win it, there is a shoe-in to win this award. I think that's going to be him after the year he put together and being able to get back to the state championship game and break all kinds of records. He's one of the finalists. In Class 2A, we have two back of the year finalists in the local area. We have from Fife High School, the running back, Logan Anderson, who led that team to a berth in the state championship game, as well as Kamori Harris, who led BB Comer to a really deep playoff run as well. And in Class 2A, one of the linemen of the year is the offensive lineman for Fife, Tucker Wilkes, who helped Fife win the state championship. He and Logan Anderson, obviously, a big part of the reason why Coach Benefield and the Red Devils have another state championship in their trophy case. So congratulations to all those players that won or that are nominated for that award. The honors come out a little bit later on, coming up next month. Also, Braden Joyner, former Oxford High School star for Auburn, up for the 7A lineman of the year representing Auburn, and former Oxford star Anquan Fagans of Thompson is one of the back of the year nominees for Thompson High School in Class 7A.
So there you go. Exciting stuff there for some local guys from Northeast Alabama. That is all the time we have for you on this Monday. We will be back with you tomorrow from 2 to 4. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
The Press Box. Right.